Hiya, I am the Showpa Guy and welcome to the June 22nd, 2023 edition of the Meta Review. Now the three decks I want to talk about is Fluffals, let's go! Fluffals got top 16 in the Niagara Falls WCQ Regionals, and on top of that we also got ourselves the Bisteel Dragon Link, which got second place, and the Vanquished first place deck that came in from the Indianapolis Regional. So for the Niagara Falls Regional, it had a 200 player pool of players coming in. This deck ended up winning top 16 of Fluffals, let's go! It is surprising to see someone play a Fluffals deck. It's surprising to see someone play like something like Edge M Chain and Fried for Patchwork, and it's not a branded deck for once. That is surprising. For the Niagara Falls Regional, there was very few representation in terms of branded Despia, which is something I was very shocked about, but we ended up seeing Fluffals in it, and the first place deck of that tournament was Floowandereeze. And of course we got like the Vanquished Souls and Dragon Link and Bisteel stuff happening here, but I am really shocked and surprised how diverse the Niagara Falls thing was. Of course there was some branded Despia, there was some Vanquished Souls here, but this really popped out to me. We also included having a top 4 Math Mech deck in Niagara Falls tournament. So really right now the format is shaping where it's extremely diverse and any deck can be any deck, but right now it feels like, as of right now, the clear like front runner for being what the best deck is right now is Vanquished Souls. But even though Vanquished Souls is the best deck in the current format, that doesn't mean that any other deck just can't beat it. Because heck, we got this deck here that ended up getting top 16 and a Floowandereeze deck that got first place. But let's go through a deck list here. We have 3 copies of Fluffal Penguin, 3 copies of Fluffal Dog, 3 copies of Fluffal Bear, 1 copy of Fluffal Octopus, 1 copy of Fluffal Wings, 1 copy of Fluffal Sheep, 1 copy of Fluffal Dolphin, 3 copies of Edge M Chain, 2 copies of Edge M Scythe, 1 copy of Edge M Sabers, 2 copies of Herald of Orange Light. This is where this deck becomes incredibly interesting. Once again, it's a 44 card deck here. We have 2 copies of Herald of Orange Light paired up with the 1 copy of Tearlament's Merly. Yes. Now the thing with Fluffals, if you don't know, this deck is really good in terms of recycling the monsters in the graveyard for future materials. So really you don't mind, or you don't really have an issue by having your Tearlaments be able to be sent to the graveyard there, which is what who is your main target for your Foolish Burial. And then we have 2 copies of the Eldritch Golden Lord. You're playing a whole lot of spell cards here, and you bring back the Golden Lord through one of the 3 copies of the Toy Vendor from your graveyard. And then we have 3 copies of Fried for Patchwork, 2 copies of Polymerization, 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods, 1 copy for the Foolish Burial, 1 copy of Call by the Grave, 2 copies of Royal Penguin's Garden. This was not meant for Fluffals, okay? It wasn't. It was meant for something like Penguin Soldier, okay? It was meant to be like a stun. This was meant to help out the stun strategies for Penguin cards, which are underdeveloped and undercooked, but used it for the Fluffal Penguin. Let's go. 1 copy of Fried for Fusion, 1 copy of Fried for Repair, and then 3 copies of Book of Moon to round about this 44 card main deck, which got top 16 out of 200 players. Fluffal, let's go. By the way, in the side there, 1 copy of Change of Heart, yay. And what I'm surprised about this, so I think it is a smarter option right now in this current format to have triple Twin Twisters, not triple Cosmic Cyclones. I understand that a lot of the modern traps nowadays have floating effects, and that's what Konami did to circumvent the fact that you're not negging 1 for 1 in terms of Vanish with trap cards, is that you have them float over into the graveyard, and then they can go and pop up another card effect, whether that be like summoning a monster from the main deck, or being able to set another card, or being to add a card to your hand. Pretty much current modern trap cards now have a floating effect, and it's not going to stop right now. We're going to see more and more cards have floating effects for spells, monsters, and traps. And so for Twin Twisters, it's not going to circumvent that like Cosmic Cyclone will. But for Twin Twisters though, you're still playing against a lot of decks that are very Floodgate focused and Floodgate heavy. In the German national tournaments, we had Labyrinth winning first place in their tournament there, and they ended up winning using a series of Floodgates, including Anti-Spell Fragrance. So something like Twin Twisters is really darn good for that. And also, when you go to game 3, you're not down in minus 1,000 life points, so it is important to understand that for when you're playing against a stun-based strategy deck, the game will most likely go into time. So if you are considering Cosmic Cyclone in your side deck that you want to put in against a stun strategy deck, be aware and think of yourself, do I want my opponent to have a potential float with a card that's face down, or do I just want to make sure that like I have my life points still in check? People say life points don't really matter, but trust me, it does will matter when you're playing against stun decks in game 3s. It really does. So the Twin Twisters thing is a very smart choice. And then we go to the extra deck here. We got 2 copies of Fright for a Cruel Whale, 1 copy of Fright for Tiger, 1 copy of Guardian Chimera, 1 copy of Predaplant, Dragostapelia, 1 copy of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. We got 1 copy of Bahamut Shark, which then goes into the 1 copy of Totally Awesome, 1 copy of Tornado Dragon, 1 copy of Sprite Sprint, 1 copy of Cross Sheep, 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, 1 copy of IP Masquerena, 1 copy of Axis Code Talker, and then the 1 copy of Baguska, which will in turn then go into the Divine Arsenal AA Zeus. That is our top 16 Fluffal deck. It is based. I appreciate that, I respect that, and I like that. Let's go. I want to see more Fluffal representation here. Also, this deck, like all in totality, if you include like the main deck, extra deck, and side deck, this is like an under $200 deck. Let's put it in that side. If you're a budget player, or I know $200 is like a lot for a lot of players, but when you compare this to the Vanquish Souls deck and the Bestial decks, which were around the ballpark of $640 to around $900, then yeah, something like this, which is only $200 in totality, include the side, extra, main deck, this is actually really darn cheap. And so Dragon Link has always been good for years. Yes, they got some like extra deck like hits, especially Agripane. I do think if you could bring Agripane back into the game, it really wouldn't shape the meta all that much. I am a firm believer that people just don't play Dragon Link out of pure fatigue when it comes to this deck here. But you know, people are trying to find new ways to go play with it, and they're playing with it with the new Bestial cards. And of course, every monster here is a light or dark monster, so it completely fits. Also, we're seeing players play Effect Failure, which is interesting. And for Dragon Link, they got, I guess, like their Bestials count as hand traps, but they don't have any traditional hand traps. Like they don't have the Drone Locks, they don't have the Ash Blossoms, they don't even have Infinite Permanence. They're rocking off the Triple Tactics Talent and the Harpy's Featherduster and the Triple Tactics Thrust. But for the most part here, they're very lenient when it comes to the hand trap stuff, because these Bestials are really darn good and useful. But if you're not playing against a dark deck or a light deck, it just doesn't really do much in terms of like stopping your opponent from doing anything with your graveyard. But let's go over the deck profile here. We have 1 copy of Chaos Emperor, the Dragon of Armageddon. This card is still incredibly expensive. It does so much, but then again, you can honestly toss this away and you're not going to change that much about this deck. And then we have 1 copy of Darkest Diabolos, Lord of the Lair. Shocking that we got this card. Let's go. We're being based here. 1 copy of Chaos Dragon Levineer. 3 copies of the Bestial Lebellion, as we're going to sink all your money into. 1 copy of the Galactic Spiral Dragon. 3 copies of Noctivision Dragon. 1 copy of Bestial Baldrake. 1 copy of Bestial Druisworm. 3 copies of Bestial Magnemut. 2 copies of Bestial Soronier. 1 copy of Black Dragon Color Serpents. 3 copies of Starlight Seifert. 1 copy of the Bestial Luber. 1 copy of White Dragon Wirebuster. 3 copies of Black Metal Dragon, 1 copy of Samsara Dragon, 1 copy of Brand Regain, 1 copy of Dragon Ravine, 3 copies of Chaos Space, 3 copies of the Melody of Awakened Dragoning for consistent supports. We got the Triple Tactics Talent plus the 3 Triple Tactics Thrust, so in all totality, you're pretty much kind of working here with like 6 Triple Tactics Talents really. And then we have here the 1 Harpy's Featherduster, 1 copy of Brandon Beast, and 1 copy of Destructive Daruma Karma Cannon. This is a 44 card deck. Yes, it's people are I guess other than Vanquish Souls and even something like Sword Soul and Math Mech, a lot of these decks are really topping high are in the ballpark where they don't necessarily need a bunch of hand traps or a bunch of tech cards. Really, you don't. There are some decks that are just full on in the mindset of, if I end up winning the dice roll in game 1, I know I can win with this deck here. Like if I roll the dice and I get lucky and I go first, I know for sure I'm guaranteed a victory with these set of cards here. And then we go to the extra deck here. We have Bestial Despair, 1 copy of Chaos Angel, 1 copy of Divine Arsenal Double Zeus, 1 copy of the Zombie Vampire, 1 copy of number 3 Hope Harbinger, 1 copy of Heretic Dragon King of Adam, 1 copy of Axis Code Talker, 1 copy of Dark the Dark Charmer Lugumi. Once again, if your opponent is playing a bunch of dark monsters, stuff like this is really darn good. If you're playing against something like Fluanderies, no. Like a lot of these cards here, for the most part, kind of useless to actually get to that matchup. 1 copy of Dragoon Knight Romulus, 1 copy of Guard Dragon Pisty, 1 copy of Nightmare Unicorn, 1 copy of Striker Dragon. I don't get why it's limited to 1. 1 copy of IP Masquerena, 2 copies of Radic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. That is the 2nd place for the 500-person Indianapolis YWC Regional Bestial Dragon Link deck. This deck is still pretty darn strong. I guess that's one thing I do like about the current format as it is, even people don't like diversity. We have Dragon Link winning, we got Mathmech winning, we got Brandespia winning, we got Dynamorphia winning, Fluandries winning, Fluffals. Like, it's really cool. Other than Vanquished Souls, it's pretty like an open, it's kind of like an open playing field in terms of what is the second best deck. People know Vanquished Souls is the best deck, but no one knows what the second or third best deck is. But then we go to the de facto best deck of the format here, without a doubt, and that is Vanquished Souls. And one thing I do like about the Vanquished Souls is the fact that it is a very small engine. It is very small. And because of that, you can throw in a whole lot of tech cards here. And I think one of the reasons why Vanquished Souls gets so much success is because of its sheer consistency, while combined with being able to potentially win if they lose a dice roll when they are going second. Because we see the Fluffal deck and the Bishop deck where they're trying to guarantee themselves that victory in game one. But for a deck like Vanquished Souls here, which has so many options to go deal with, which has like so many weapons and tech cards that can go and potentially stop an entire opponent's play. And we also even see it with something like Labyrinth also, where they have a lot of options to go stop an opponent's play through the usage of tech cards. I think Vanquished Souls is in a very good place right now. There's nothing at all inherently overpowered or busted or unfair or broken about Vanquished Souls. Other than I do think in the future we are going to see a limit of Rock the Vanquisher, because any Vanquished Soul monster here immediately goes into Rock the Vanquisher, and then from then on you can go and go on your card advantage. So this is the only like unfair card kind of when it comes to Vanquished Souls. But for the most part here, this deck is very reliant on your ability to understand matchup knowledge and the choices you pick for the format in terms of tech cards. I see some people not even running Droll Lockbird. I see people like don't even run any Ghost Bell Haunted Mansions. This is the first time I'm seeing a Vanquished Souls deck that runs the Goron and not Kumungus. So keep that in your mind. Also, no triple attack talent. This person made the right choice with not having triple attack talent, because as you saw like in the other decks here, people are playing decks that are not hand trap heavy. And so this person chose not to go for triple attack talent, and it helped them out in the end. They got first place anyway. So we have 1 copy of Vanquished Soul Pantera, 3 copies of Vanquished Soul Raisin, 3 copies of Vanquished Soul Dr. Madlove, 3 copies of Vanquished Soul Heavy Borger, 2 copies of Vanquished Soul Caesar Valius. I've only been seeing people run 1 copy of this guy. This person's running 2, but then again, this is the only person I know running the Goron, the Mad Flame Kaiju, 1 copy of that, 2 copies of Bestial Magnamut, 3 copies of Effect Veiler, surprised about that, 3 copies of Droll Lockbird, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 copies of Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion, 2 copies of Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion, 2 copies of Vanquished Soul Continue, 1 copy of Vanquished Soul Dust Devil, 3 copies of Stake Your Soul, 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army, 3 copies of Small World, and 3 copies of Infinite Permanence. 40 card deck, very consistent, very flexible. I like it, I really do. Oh, by the way, there's a card, EEV, Eradicator Epidemic Virus, a card that's very controversial right now in the current landscape of Yu-Gi-Oh! I won't be surprised if more people will keep playing it, but I also firmly do believe that in a couple months time we are not going to see this card again. We really aren't. And it's not because it's going to get banned or limited, it's because this card goes in rotation in terms of how viable it is in the format. So I think it's good right now for some decks, but I don't see it being good in a couple months. Then we have 3 copies of Rock the Vanquisher. This card I expect to be limited in the next ban list. 2 copies of Divine Arsenal Double A Zeus, 1 copy of Evil Swarm Exoton Knight, 1 copy of Zodiac Chickening, 1 copy of Zodiac Borbro, 1 copy of number 41 Baguska, 1 copy of Nightmare Cerberus, 1 copy of Nightmare Phoenix, 2 copies of Fling Rebo, 1 copy of Axis Code Talker, and if everything goes wrong, you got yourself the 1 copy of Unworld Goddess of the Closed World. Once again, Vanquished Souls, the clear, without a doubt, defined best deck in the format because of its flexibility and consistency and being able to win in game 2s. Nobody knows what the second or third best deck is. It feels like it's Vanquished Souls and every other deck trying to figure out its identity as to where it is in the format. But I do like that diversity when it comes to this format here, because even though people don't like diversity because you can't plan out for everything, a deck like Vanquished Souls can truly plan out for almost everything. It really can. Even a deck like Mathmech, even though it ended up losing Circular, it ended up losing 2 copies of it, people only running 1, it ended up getting top 4 in another WCU regional. So it is like an open slot. Like it's an open fight day where any deck can beat any deck right now. Even though Vanquished Souls is good, we've seen Fluandries win first place. We've seen Brandespia win first place. We also see Labyrinth win first place. Bisteel Dragon Link end up winning second place here. So let's not be surprised here if, in next week's series of tournaments, we're going to see a whole lot of different decks end up topping. I expect Vanquish to top yet again for next week's set of tournaments. But as of right now, I'm going to say here, it's still an open season and any deck can potentially beat any deck. I'm the Showpile Guy, and I'll see you guys at next week's meta review. So till next time, see you later. Feel free to hit like and subscribe if you want to. You told me if you want to do so, really cool if you did.